Hey everyone, this is Randy with Modern with Randy. Today I thought I'd go over the Arena Championship that just happened here this past weekend. For those of you who don't know what was happening, it was an invite-only um, tournament where you had to play uh, 3 rounds of draft, and then the rest of it was all explore. So we did get to see a bunch of different decks that we'll see in Pioneer basically, and kind of go from there. I wanted to break down the metagame that was happening along with what was going on with the top 8 and what we saw eventually win. So this is the breakdown. As you can see, it wasn't a huge tournament, it wasn't a huge field, but we had almost 50% of the field being Rakdos Vampires at 15. Followed up by Amalia combo, and then Is It Phoenix and Quintorius combo. Their respective second, third, fourth place decks. I mean, huge difference between what people perceive to be the best deck or what people perceive to be the deck that you want to take to a tournament that's going to be open field. Because clearly, Rakdos Vampires is one of these decks that has been putting up numbers, has been putting up results. It is a good deck. It is the best Rakdos deck we've seen so far. Rakdos wasn't losing percentage points before, it's still doing well. And then we see Amalia combo. Basically that deck has waxed and waned in popularity. I do think it's a good deck. I think it's well played, and I think that if you're not going to be running into a lot of like blue-white control, the deck feels great. Because against Rakdos Vampires, you can still win through the combo, or at the very worst, like you can set up the combo and say that being able to say they have a way to remove it, or like you go for the combo on like a inopportune turn to where like you get to go through the combo instant speed to make sure you don't die, but then your Amalia is not able to attack yet or whatever, puts up a bunch of life, and then you can still figure out a way to come back from the match. Same thing with like Is It Phoenix is been shown time and time again to be a good deck. Like turns out being able to draw 3 cards for 1 mana is broken. It is very powerful. And then surprisingly, Quintorius combo was the 4th most played deck, which I didn't think was going to end up happening. That deck has kind of been a joke to being, broken to being whatever. So it's kind of surprising to go ahead and see that deck pop up as the 4th most played deck. But this is what we ended up with for the top 8. So you'll see that there are 4 Rakdos Vampires, which makes sense. It was almost 50% of the meta. It makes sense to be also 50% of the top 8. Then we also had 1 Quintorius combo, surprisingly, 1 Amalia combo, and 1 Is It Phoenix. And then ultimately we were, it came down to Quintorius combo, not Exorius, Quintorius combo, and Is It Phoenix for the finals, which is kind of surprising that, Vampires put 8 copies into, or 4 copies into the top 8 and did not make it to the finals. But I would go over kind of the top 8 decks and kind of showcase what was going on. So first one here is Rakdos midrange. I just took one of the 4. There wasn't really too many differences between the 4. Some were playing like 1 or 2 sideboard slots different. Some were playing Go for the Throat, or some were playing Heartless Act to remove counters against, I'm guessing, the Archfiends that they were expecting to see in the mirrors. But this deck is pretty stock. There's not really too much you're going to change or go about changing outside of some of the removal spell counts. Like you can kind of divvy up and change up. Like I said, I've seen like 1 Go for the Throat alongside 1 of the Heartless Act. I've seen 2 Go for the Throat here. Like you see, just those are the numbers that really get changed. We're playing 4 Shordens, we're playing 4 Vein Rippers, kind of like the namesake of the deck for, the Rakdos Vampires, and then just good creatures, good cards. Like there's not really too much to say about this. Quakebringer in the sideboard's kind of new, kind of different, at least for me. Really just said there because it says players can't gain life, so it helps against the Amalia combo. It gives you a little bit of extra reach for them. But outside of that, just your normal Rakdos Vamps. Then we come to the Amalia combo. So I will say this deck list is a little bit different. It's playing 3 Fauna Shamans, which I think is kind of a newer update to the deck. I know it was toyed around with when it first came out. Kind of went back and forth. Also playing 1 Extraction Specialist in the main. A little bit different. But outside of that, looking pretty good, looking pretty solid. 2 Thought Seeds in the main is also a little bit different. Not something that we see a whole bunch of. I know it's usually 2 Thought Seeds in the sideboard for sure. Also, for some reason, they were playing a Collected Company in the sideboard as well, which I thought was a little different. Usually, you just kind of play those in the main deck, like it's a good 2-for-1. Essentially, you're getting 2 creatures. You're hopefully assembling the combo type thing. And then in the sideboard, nothing too crazy to notate. Anything outside of the Collected Company being in the sideboard. But they have removal spells. They have some things for different matchups, for like the control matchup, mid-range matchup, things like that. But yeah, nothing too crazy with this deck. Still a solid deck. I think this is something you want to take to your RCQs or you want to practice. It's a great deck to practice. I don't think anything's getting banned out of it anytime soon. It is a good deck though, and I do think that the Aetherflux Reservoir is kind of something you want to do, where it's able to set up that combo essentially. So you go through your deck with the Amalia until you can hopefully put Aetherflux Reservoir on top. That way, if they kill your Amalia, you still just get to go untap, play Aetherflux Reservoir. I'll pay 50 life because I'm at like 80, 90 something, and I'll deal 50 damage to you. But moving on to one of our finalist decks here, the Quintorius combo. Kind of a deck that I had thought had fallen off the radar or wasn't doing too well, or kind of just was almost a meme deck in my opinion. I do think that this deck is great in some senses if you don't expect to see control at all. Like, this deck kind of folds hard to control. Control is definitely one of the problems, which you can see why they got 4 Thought Distortions in the sideboard. For anybody who doesn't know what that card does, it is 6 mana, can't be countered, and you reveal target player's hand, they discard all non-creature spells. So basically just you get to dress their entire hand, which against control is just like, hey man, it's great you had counter spells in interaction, you have nothing now. But for anybody who doesn't know, yes, Mr. Greg, But for anybody who doesn't know how this deck works, essentially your goal is to cast Quintorius Kane. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, it deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life. And care about his -3, which is Discover 4. So the only things you can hit in the deck that are 4 or less is Clever Impersonator and Spark Double. So both of those come in as copies of Quintorius. So basically what you do is you play Quintorius on 5, ideally. You down tick Quintorius. You then reveal over Spark Double in exile. So you cast it from exile, so they lose 2 life, you gain 2 life. Spark Double, copy Quintorius Kane. I'm going to repeat this process, and you will eventually drain them out, essentially. And then to kind of support along with this deck is a bunch of ways to search for basic lands, or just basic lands and kind of mana ramp. And then you also have Leyline Binding as your removal spell of choice, because you are 5 colors. And then you also have Trumpeting Carnosaur, which basically is just there as the other Quintorius. Because, I mean, worst case scenario, if this was to happen, is like you can cast Trumpeting Carnosaur on turn 6 or earlier with your mana ramp. You discover 5, which you're hopefully hitting Quintorius. Obviously, you could hit Clever Impersonator, Spark Double, in which case you're just going to copy your Carnosaur and repeat, and you're going to keep discovering until hopefully you hit Quintorius. But it could happen, it could be worse. But this is a deck overall. I think it's not terribly positioned against the metagame as a whole. I do think you're a little slow when it comes to the other combo deck. Like, I think that the other combo deck being able to win on turn 3 is a little bit scarier than your deck that's not going to win nearly as early. But I do think that if you're expecting a lot of like mid-range or a lot of just like not super aggro and not a bunch of blue-white control, this deck can do well. And that's kind of what we saw in this format. Half the field was Rakdos, and this deck has made it all the way to the finals. So clearly it was doing something right. But that's pretty much all it is for this one. And then the other finalist was Is It Phoenix? So nothing too crazy about this list. Honestly, I think the craziest part is that we kind of come full circle to realizing that Izzet Phoenix is such a good deck, and they've now started metagaming against themselves with the Ashiok in the main deck, which is there just to feel your graveyard and be able to exile your opponent's graveyard. I'm sure the search, like your opponents can't search their libraries, comes up in some zero amount of games, but outside of that, like it's definitely there for the mirror, the kind of tech against the mirror. And then we see 4 Phoenix, 4 Shredders, 4 Pranksters, pretty much the 12 creatures you're gonna play in this deck. Treasure Cruise, basically the cards keeping this whole deck together. You got your cantrips, your sleight of hand, consider, opt, Rubel's Spells of Fire, Impulse, and Lightning Axe, and then Spell Pierce and Drawara's Disruption as your disruption spells, and Prismari Command just to kind of give a little bit more loot to you and a little bit more just like range with the 2 damage. And then sideboard pretty stock, basically just playing, Crackling Drake and Young Pyro for the decks that you're afraid of, bringing in Graveyard Hate, Mystical Dispute, Negate, all good against the control decks or against, the other Phoenix decks. Anger and Brotherhood's End against, the smaller decks. Ashiok for the mirror, Brazen Borrower, this has a good catch-all, and Aether Gust because, red spells are still good. Ultimately, Izzet Phoenix is a deck that took down the tournament as well. Not too surprising, it's a very consistent deck. It's one of the decks that I think if you're going to run any RCQs or you're going to play in any RCQs, you're going to see this deck. Like, this is not something that's like, oh, it's crazy, Izzet Phoenix won a tournament. Like, no one's surprised by this at all. I'm still in the camp that I think Treasure Cruise needs to be banned, and perhaps maybe unban Special Federation, things like that. But just kind of going over what we saw here in this last tournament and kind of what you can expect to see from your RCQs. I think that if we were to go back and look at the metagame here, it's not too crazy to what you're seeing here. I think that Rakdos Vampires is probably a little bit overrepresented in here, but like Rakdos Vampires, Izzet Phoenix, Amalia Combo, these are going to be the top 3 decks you're going to see going into any big tournaments, any RCQs. It's not crazy. Like, this is what you're going to see happen. I do think that in paper events you're going to see more Izzet Phoenix, you will Rakdos Vampires, just for the pure fact that like Izzet Phoenix is a cheaper deck by far than Rakdos Vampires, especially with Sorin and Vein Ripper still in that high of the still on the high from the Pro Tour, and people just scrambling to buy them and get them. Sorin's still expensive, Vein Rippers are still pricey among the other cards in that deck. But that is what I want to talk about this week. I will have another video coming out this week as well, so look forward to that. And then obviously, if you guys want to keep watching these videos, keep trying to support me, feel free to subscribe, like, ring the notification bell, all those fun little things that I now have to talk about to hopefully still get views. And don't forget to check out Daddy23. His name is Dakota. Him and I do a podcast every week on Saturday. It comes out. If you want to check that out, I'll have a link to it in the description below. Otherwise, have a good day, guys.